Have you ever wondered why the most successful men you know are choosing to stay single? Imagine walking into a high-end restaurant and seeing a table full of accomplished men in their 30s and 40s, each dining alone by choice. Not because they can't find someone, but because they've discovered something that would terrify most people. They are happier without love. Picture this. Meet David, a 32-year-old surgeon who makes $400,000 a year. He drives a Tesla, owns a penthouse apartment, and by every metric society uses to measure success, he's won the game. Yet every Friday night, while his colleagues are out on dates or fighting with their wives, David is at home, reading philosophy and planning his next solo trip to Japan. He's not broken. He's not bitter. He's part of a silent revolution that's reshaping masculinity itself. This isn't just about one man. Across the Western world, an entire generation of men is quietly walking away from the very thing they've been told to chase since childhood, romantic love. And the most shocking part? They are not just surviving without it, they are thriving. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote about a man who fell so deeply in love that he realized marrying his beloved would destroy the very passion that drew him to her. He called this the aesthetic paradox, the idea that love, when institutionalized, becomes its own gravedigger. What Kierkegaard could never have imagined is that in 2024, millions of men would be living this paradox on a massive scale. Recent studies paint a picture that should make every relationship expert reconsider everything they thought they knew about love. Research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships reveals that men today are 50% less likely to actively seek romantic relationships compared to their father's generation. The American Sociological Review found that 1 in 3 men under 30 report zero romantic activity in the past year, a historic high that's climbing every month. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. This isn't happening because men are failing at love. It's happening because they are succeeding at something else entirely, discovering who they are when they are not performing for female approval. Let me tell you about Marcus, a 29-year-old marketing executive who spent 2 years trying to win back his ex-girlfriend. He sent flowers, wrote letters, even went to couples therapy alone. Then one morning, he woke up and asked himself a question that changed everything. What if I'm enough exactly as I am? Within 6 months, Marcus has started a podcast, learned to cook gourmet meals, and traveled to 15 countries. When I asked him about dating, he said something that chilled me to the bone. I used to think I needed someone to complete me. Now I realize I was already complete. I just needed to stop letting others convince me I was broken. The data backs up what men like Marcus are discovering. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology tracked men who voluntarily embraced solitude for at least 6 months. The results were staggering. 72% reported increased self-confidence, enhanced creativity, and better emotional resilience. These weren't men running from pain. They were men running towards something society told them was impossible, fulfillment without romantic validation. Kierkegaard understood this phenomenon better than anyone. He wrote about the leap of faith, the moment when a person stops looking for answers outside themselves and instead confronts the terrifying freedom of their own existence. What's happening now is that men are making this leap en masse, and the results are both beautiful and devastating. Consider the case of James, a 35-year-old architect who discovered his fiancée was cheating 3 weeks before their wedding. Traditional wisdom would suggest he should grieve, heal, and get back out there. Instead, James canceled the wedding, sold his house, and moved to a cabin in Colorado. For the first time in his adult life, he experienced complete silence, no text to answer, no expectations to meet, no one to impress. I realized I had been so busy trying to be the man someone else wanted that I had never met the man I actually was. He told me the transformation didn't happen overnight. James spent months in what he describes as productive depression, working with his hands, reading voraciously, and slowly rebuilding his sense of self from the ground up. When he finally emerged, he had started a furniture-making business that now employs 12 people and generates more income than his previous corporate job ever did. But here's a twist that nobody talks about. The moment these men stopped chasing love, they became magnetic in ways they never were before. A 2024 study from the University of Chicago found that men who displayed genuine self-sufficiency were rated as significantly more attractive by women, even when those women claimed to prefer emotionally available partners. The paradox is maddening. The less men need love, the more lovable they become. The less they chase, the more they are desired. It's as if the universe has a cool sense of humor, offering men everything they once wanted precisely when they no longer want it. This brings us to the darkest revelation of all. What if the entire modern approach to love has been fundamentally wrong? What if teaching men to be vulnerable, emotionally available, and relationship-focused has actually made them less attractive and less fulfilled? The men walking away from love aren't broken. They might be the only ones who are finally healing. If you're feeling a knot in your stomach right now, if something about this story is making you question everything you thought you knew about love and masculinity, then you need to hear what comes next. Because what I'm about to reveal will show you why this quiet exodus isn't just changing individual men. It's rewriting the entire script of modern romance. Hit that subscribe button, because the next part of this story will challenge everything you believe about what it means to love and be loved in the 21st century. The transformation doesn't end with men simply walking away from love. What happens next is where the real revolution begins, and it's something that would make even Kierkegaard himself tremble with recognition. There's an ancient Spartan ritual that most people have forgotten, but every man going through this awakening lives it instinctively. When a Spartan boy came of age, he was taken into the wilderness, stripped of all possessions, and left to survive alone. The elders called it the proving, a brutal lesson designed to teach one fundamental truth. You are enough, even when you have nothing. Modern men are creating their own version of this ritual, and the results are reshaping masculinity itself. Take the story of Alex, a 31-year-old financial advisor who lost everything in a divorce: his house, his savings, and custody of his daughter. Instead of fighting the system or drowning in bitterness, Alex did something unexpected. He embraced the emptiness. I realized I had been defining myself by what I owned, who I was married to, and what others expected of me, Alex explained. When all of that was stripped away, I panicked at first. But then I discovered something terrifying and beautiful. I was still there. The real me had been buried under all those roles and expectations. Alex spent the next year living in a studio apartment with nothing but the essentials. He meditated daily, learned to cook, started writing, and slowly rebuilt his relationship with his daughter on his own terms. But here's what's remarkable. He didn't just survive this process. He thrived. Within 18 months, he had started his own investment firm, was in the best shape of his life, and had developed a presence that people described as magnetic. The psychological research confirms what men like Alex are discovering. A 2023 Harvard study revealed that men who experience significant romantic rejection but channel that energy into creative or intellectual pursuits were 3 times more likely to achieve extraordinary success than those who immediately sought new relationships. History is littered with examples. Nietzsche wrote Thus Spoke Zarathustra after being rejected by Salome. Beethoven composed his greatest symphonies while deaf and heartbroken. Kierkegaard himself produced his most profound works after breaking off his engagement to Regine Olsen. But there's a darker side to this transformation that society desperately wants to ignore. The moment a man becomes truly self-sufficient, he becomes dangerous to the entire system. Think about it. An emotionally independent man doesn't consume mindlessly to fill an empty void. He doesn't tolerate toxic relationships out of fear of loneliness. He doesn't work himself to death trying to impress others. He becomes what Kierkegaard called a solitary one, a man who has found his center and refuses to be moved from it. This terrifies people, especially women who have been conditioned to believe that a man's primary purpose is to serve and provide. Consider the case of Robert, a former corporate lawyer who after his divorce abandoned his 6-figure salary to live in a cabin in Montana. His friend called it a midlife crisis, but Robert saw it differently. I realized I had been living someone else's life for 40 years, he said. The marriage, the career, the house and the suburbs, none of it was mine. I was just playing a role. Within a year, Robert had started writing raw, unfiltered essays about masculinity, loss, and self-discovery. His work resonated with hundreds of thousands of men who felt equally lost and trapped. The media labeled him a dangerous influence, but the truth was simpler. Robert had tapped into what Kierkegaard called the dizziness of freedom, the vertigo that comes from realizing you can choose your own path. The transformation these men undergo isn't just personal, it's cognitive. A 2024 study in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology found that men who embraced voluntary solitude for extended periods showed a 40% increase in cognitive performance, decisiveness, and creative thinking. They weren't just healing from heartbreak. They were literally rewiring their brains to function independently. But here's where the story takes its most fascinating turn. These men don't remain isolated forever. After months or years of self-reconstruction, many of them re-enter the world, but as completely different people. They are no longer seeking validation or trying to prove their worth. They are simply existing as themselves, and the effect is magnetic. Women notice this change immediately, but they don't know how to respond to it. Dating app data shows a 300% increase in searches for emotionally unavailable men over the past 2 years, with many women admitting they are attracted to men who seem to need nothing from them. The paradox is complete. The less these men chase, the more they are desired. I spoke with Sarah, a 28-year-old marketing director, about this phenomenon. I used to want men who were completely focused on me, she said. But now I find myself drawn to guys who have their own thing going on. There's something attractive about a man who doesn't need me to complete him. When I asked her what changed, she paused for a long moment. I think I realized that needy men are actually kind of exhausting. They want me to be their everything, and that's too much pressure. This shift in female preference is creating a new dynamic that nobody fully understands yet. Men who have learned to be complete without women are discovering that women are more interested in them than ever before. But here's the cruel irony. These men no longer want traditional relationships. They've tasted freedom, and they are not willing to give it up for the promise of companionship. The implications are staggering. We're witnessing the birth of a new type of masculinity, one that doesn't need external validation to function. These men love differently, relate differently, and live differently. They are not anti-women. They are pro-themselves in a way that previous generations never learned to be. As we move deeper into this transformation, we're forced to confront an uncomfortable question. What happens when an entire generation of men becomes emotionally self-sufficient? What happens to love, to relationships, to the very fabric of how men and women relate to each other? The answer is both beautiful and terrifying, and it's playing out in real time across the Western world. In the final part of this story, we'll explore what happens when these transformed men encounter love again, not as desperate seekers, but as complete beings who choose rather than need. The results will challenge everything you thought you knew about modern romance, and they might just represent the evolution of love itself. But first, I need you to do something. If this story is resonating with you, if you're seeing yourself or someone you know in these experiences, drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, your own experiences, or just let me know what's going through your mind. Because this isn't just content, it's a conversation about the future of human connection, and your voice matters in that discussion. Imagine a man who has walked through the fire of complete self-discovery and emerged as pure gold. He is no longer seeking love to complete him, no longer afraid of being alone, no longer willing to compromise his essence for the promise of companionship. Now imagine what happens when such a man encounters love again, not as a desperate seeker, but as a sovereign being who has the power to choose. This is where our story reaches its most profound and disturbing conclusion. Because what happens next challenges everything we've been taught about love, relationships, and what it means to be human in the 21st century. Meet Thomas, a 38-year-old entrepreneur who spent 5 years rebuilding himself after a devastating divorce. He learned to cook gourmet meals for one, traveled to 30 countries alone, built a successful business, and developed what he calls divine indifference, the ability to appreciate beauty without needing to possess it. Then, on an ordinary Wednesday at a bookstore in Portland, something extraordinary happened. A woman was reading Kierkegaard, Fear and Trembling, the same book that had guided Thomas through his darkest period. She wasn't trying to get his attention. She was genuinely absorbed in the text. When she looked up and their eyes met, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the possibility of genuine connection. But here's what makes this story remarkable. Thomas didn't immediately approach her. He didn't try to impress her or win her over. Instead, he observed. He watched how she turned the pages, how she made notes in the margins, how she seemed completely comfortable in her own solitude. Only when he recognized a kindred spirit, someone who had also learned to be whole, did he speak. This is a new paradigm that's emerging. Men who have undergone this transformation don't want to be needed. They want to be chosen. They don't seek women to complete them. They seek women who are already complete. The dating dynamics this creates are unlike anything we've seen before. Recent research from the Institute for Advanced Studies in Human Behavior tracked 500 men, who had voluntarily abstained from romantic relationships for over 2 years. When these men eventually re-entered the dating world, their behavior was radically different. They had zero tolerance for games, manipulation, or emotional unavailability. They weren't interested in fixing anyone or being fixed. They wanted partnership, not parenthood. The women who tried to date these men were often shocked by the experience. He was completely present when he was with me, but he never seemed to need me, one woman reported. It was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. I realized I didn't know how to be with someone who didn't need me to validate their existence. This creates a profound selection pressure. Only women who have also done their own inner work can successfully connect with these transformed men. It's as if the universe is sorting people into 2 categories, those who seek external validation and those who have found internal completion. Thomas's story continues in a way that would make Kierkegaard proud. He and the woman from the bookstore, Elena, began what can only be described as a philosophical romance. They didn't move in together. They didn't merge their finances or social circles. Instead, they created something unprecedented, a relationship based on mutual sovereignty. We choose each other every day, Thomas explained. Not because we need each other, but because we genuinely enjoy each other's company. If either of us ever stops choosing, we're both free to leave without drama or devastation. This might sound cold or calculating, but the results are extraordinary. Their relationship has lasted 4 years without a single fight, breakup, or moment of desperate clinging. They support each other's individual growth, maintain their separate identities, and love without attachment. It's what the ancient Greeks called agape, love that seeks the good of the other without self-interest. But here's the most shocking part. This model is spreading. Dating apps are reporting a new category of users, people who explicitly state they are looking for sovereign partnerships rather than traditional relationships. These connections are characterized by emotional independence, mutual respect, and the absence of jealousy or possessiveness. The implications are staggering. We're witnessing the potential evolution of human bonding itself. Traditional relationships, based on need and dependency, are being replaced by conscious partnerships based on choice and mutual enhancement. It's beautiful, terrifying, and completely unprecedented in human history. However, this transformation isn't without its casualties. Many women who were raised to believe their value came from being needed are struggling to adapt. Support groups for women dating emotionally unavailable men are actually support groups for women learning to be with men who don't need them to function. The adjustment is painful but necessary. Similarly, men who haven't done their own inner work find themselves increasingly irrelevant in the dating market. Women who have tasted genuine emotional independence are no longer interested in men who need constant validation or who define themselves through their relationships. The old model of masculinity, provider, protector, performer, is becoming obsolete. This brings us to the ultimate question: is this the end of love or its evolution? Kierkegaard, who spent his life exploring the depths of human experience, might argue that we're finally approaching what he called true love, love that seeks nothing for itself but the good of the beloved. The men who have given up on love haven't actually given up on love at all. They've given up on the distorted, needy, possessive version of love that our culture has normalized. In its place, they've discovered something far more powerful, the ability to love without attachment, to connect without dependence, to choose without desperation. As I write this, millions of men across the Western world are making the same journey. They are walking away from the script they were given and writing their own. Some will remain single and find fulfillment in solitude. Others will create new forms of partnership that our grandparents wouldn't recognize. All of them are participating in what might be the most significant evolution in human relationships since the invention of marriage itself. The quiet revolution is no longer quiet. It's reshaping how we think about love, commitment, and human connection. And whether you're a man who recognizes himself in these stories or a woman trying to understand this new landscape, one thing is certain: the old rules no longer apply. The future of love belongs to those who have learned to love themselves first. Everything else is just details. Now I want to hear from you. Are you part of this transformation? Have you witnessed it in your own life or in the lives of people you know? What do you think this means for the future of human relationships? Share your thoughts, your experiences, and your questions in the comments below, because this conversation is just beginning, and your voice is crucial to understanding where we go from here. Let's explore together what it means to love and be loved in a world where the old rules no longer apply.